po, Ms. Moana.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I will jumpstart this session with an MPACS situationer. Next slide, please. Last August 14, 2024, the World Health Organization, Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom has determined that the upsurge of mpox in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or DRC, and a growing number of countries in Africa constitute a public health emergency of international concern, or what we call PHEIC, under the International Health Regulations 2005. Mpox, next slide please. Mpox, previously known as monkeypox, is a viral illness caused by the monkeypox virus, a species of the genus Orthopox virus. There are two distinct clades of the virus, clade 1 with subclades 1A and 1B, and clade 2 with subclades 1A and 1B. In 2022 to 2023, a global outbreak of mpox was caused by the clade 1B strain. Common symptoms of mpox are a skin rash or mucosal lesions, which can last 2 to 4 weeks, accompanied by fever, headache, muscle aches, back pain, low energy, and swollen lymph nodes. Mpox is primarily transmitted through close intimate contact, such as sexual contact, kissing, hugging, cuddling, and other activities that involve close skin-to-skin contact with an infected individual. The WHO, next slide please. The WHO first declared mpox as a public health emergency of international concern on July 23, 2022, and was declared over on May 11, 2023. So the declaration on August 14, 2024, earlier mentioned, was the second time for mpox to be classified as a public health emergency of international concern. One of the reasons taken into account for the second PHEIC declaration was the detection of a new mpox virus strain, clade 1B, which is considered to be causing the upsurge in DRC. As of August 28, 2024, which remains the latest, 103,448 confirmed mpox cases, including 225 deaths, had been reported globally across 123 countries and territories. In general, next slide please, countries including the Philippines are reporting mpox clade 2, which again is milder than clade 1. The spread of mpox cases during the first PHEIC declaration was linked to mpox clade 2. Circling back to one of the main considerations for the second PHEIC declaration, the new clade 1B is being detected continuously in DRC and its neighboring countries like Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda. Clade 1, both A and B, has only been detected in African region previously. However, on August 25, 2024, Sweden reported one imported case of mpox clade 1B. The case is an adult who returned from an African country with ongoing clade 1B transmission. The week after, Thailand also detected mpox clade 1B from a region national who traveled to Thailand and had a history of travel in an African country. While the Philippines has no direct flights to and from the African region, points of entry are connected through different layover routes. Next slide. In the Philippines, the first mpox case was reported on July 28, 2022. 3 other cases were reported for the rest of 2022. In 2023, 5 additional mpox cases were detected, and all previous 9 cases were isolated, provided with symptom-based clinical care, and had since recovered. This year, from January 1 to September 6, a total of 59 suspect mpox cases were reported in the country. There were already 32 which tested negative, but we are awaiting for the confirmatory lab results for the 19 suspect cases. On August 18, 2024, the 10th MPAX case was reported in the Philippines. Since then, 7 additional cases were reported. In summary, a total of 8 MPAX cases were reported this year and are all considered as active cases and undergoing isolation. Going to the profile of the 8 cases reported this year, ages range from 12 to 37 years old. The 12-year-old case is the youngest we've detected thus far. Most of the cases are male, only 1 female. 6 of the 8 cases were residing in NCR, while the 2 were from Calabarzon. All are currently in isolation, mostly at home. Let me now proceed to the updated case classification as stated in DM 2024-0306. When we say or when we tag someone as suspect, next slide please, and the updated case classification. Next. Next, Papa. Thank you. There. When we tag a person as a suspect case, we say that a person who is a close contact of a probable or confirmed MPAX case in the 21 days before the onset of signs or symptoms and who presents with any of the following: acute onset of fever, headache, myalgia, back pain, profound weakness, or fatigue. That's one definition of a suspect case. Or a suspect case can be a person presenting with an unexplained rash. Unexplained and acute skin rash, mucosal lesions, or lymphadenopathy. The skin rash may include single or multiple lesions in the anogenital region or elsewhere in the body. Mucosal lesions may include single or multiple oral, conjunctival, urethral, penile, vaginal, or anorectal lesions. Anorectal lesions can also manifest as anorectal inflammation, pain, and/or bleeding. In addition to that definition of presentation of unexplained acute rash, this rash, for which the common causes of acute rash, like varicella zoster, herpes zoster, measles, herpes simplex, bacterial skin infections, and the other rash mentioned there, do not explain the clinical picture. So that's why it's called unexplained acute rash. So let's go to next slide, please. Probable case. So when can we say that a person or this person consulting the facility is a probable case? A person presenting with an unexplained acute rash, like what we have in the suspect case, plus one or more of the following. That person expressed that he had contact or is epidemiologically linked or had face-to-face exposure, including healthcare workers without respiratory protection. That person has direct physical contact with skin or skin lesions, including sexual contact or contact with contaminated materials such as clothing, bedding, or utensils, to a probable or confirmed case of MPAX in the 21 days before symptom onset. Or the person presenting to your facility who had that unexplained acute skin rash expressed that he or she had multiple sexual partners in the 21 days before symptom onset. Then that person is tagged as a probable case. For the confirmed, a person with laboratory confirmed, of course, that person should have a test result that he or she is a laboratory confirmed MPAX infection by detection of unique sequences of viral DNA by real-time polymerase chain reaction, or what is commonly called in the lab as PCR testing and/or sequencing. How about a contact? You are considered a contact or a close contact if you are a person who, in the period beginning with the onset of the source case first symptom and ending with all scabs have fallen off and a fresh layer of skin has formed underneath, has had one or more of the following exposures. Kung kayo po ay nakasama ng source or nung confirmed case na nagkaroon po kayo ng face-to-face exposure, direct physical contact, including sexual contact po, contact with contaminated materials such as clothing or bedding. How about a discarded case? You will be tagged as a discarded case if initially you are a suspect or probable case, but upon the return of your result, it tested negative for Mpox virus through the RT-PCR or sequencing. So you will be tagged as a discarded case. So that's all for our case classification. Again, maraming salamat po.
Okay, thank you so much again, Ms. Moana Lloyd T. Pablo. Again, she is the Nurse 2 and the Event-Based Surveillance and Response Point Person of the Regional Epidemiology and Surveillance Unit. Okay, so let's proceed. Okay, so for our second discussion, we are now at the Department Memorandum number 2024-0306, updated interim guidelines on the prevention, detection, and management of Mpox, prevention, detection, monitoring, and isolation, treatment, and reintegration and disposal of dead bodies. So it will be jointly discussed by Dr. Eva Marie Vittorio and Ms. Christine Marie Aide Guzman.
So good afternoon, everyone. Today, I will briefly discuss the DOH Department Memorandum 2024-0306, or the updated interim guidelines on the prevention, detection, and management of Mpox. Next slide, please. Next slide. So let's start off with the prevention. So with the prevention, it was stated on our department memorandum that all individuals shall adhere to the standard minimum precautions for the prevention of Mpox, such as but not limited to the following. First, let's avoid close and intimate skin-to-skin contact, such as sexual contact, kissing, hugging, and cuddling with individuals who are suspect, probable, or confirmed cases of Mpox. If contact is unavoidable due to the need of care, caregivers must adhere to proper prevention and control measures, including the use of appropriate PPEs or personal protective equipment. Likewise, we need to observe frequent and proper hand hygiene with the use of alcohol-based hand rub or hand washing whenever hands are soiled or contaminated. Next, we need to also ensure that objects and surfaces suspected of being contaminated with the virus or handled by an infectious person are thoroughly cleaned and disinfected. And also, let's avoid contact with animals, particularly mammals, that may carry the virus, including sick or diseased animals found in areas where Mpox is present. Signs of Mpox in animals, including pets, can include rash, fever, lethargy, and loss of appetite. Next slide, please. Household members and persons caring for suspected, probable, and confirmed cases of Mpox are also required to practice proper hand hygiene and cleaning practices using the appropriate FDA-registered and approved standard household cleaning materials such as our common household disinfectant or bleach products. Contaminated surfaces shall be cleaned and disinfected. Standard household cleaning or disinfectants may be used in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. Activities such as dry dusting, sweeping, or vacuuming shall be avoided. Wet cleaning methods, example is using damp mopping or water-based using disinfectant wipes, sprays, and mopping are recommended. Also, dishes and other eating utensils shall not be shared. Soiled dishes and eating utensils shall be washed by hand with warm water and soap. And also, laundry items such as our beddings, towels, and clothing used by the suspect, probable, and confirmed cases shall be handled separately from the rest and shall be washed manually or in a standard washing machine with warm water and detergent. Bleach may be added, but it is not required. Soiled laundry shall not be shaken or otherwise handled in a manner that may disperse infectious particles. Gloves and masks shall be worn when handling soiled laundry to avoid direct contact with the contaminated material. Next slide, please. To continue with the prevention, all inbound and outbound international travelers shall be aware of risk and prevalence of mpox transmission in the destination country and adhere to the health protocols issued by health authorities, conveyance operators, airport and seaport terminal management, both from the Philippines and destination country. Let's provide honest and accurate responses to the passengers' health declaration questionnaires required upon arrival and departure at airports and seaports. And lastly, let's approach health personnel on duty if we are experiencing any signs and symptoms of mpox. Also, all health workers, including non-health personnel delivering clinical and environmental services such as our housekeeping and janitorial services, shall perform appropriate disinfection and cleaning and wear complete and appropriate PPE and observe our standard protocol. Let's clean and disinfect all reusable equipment with hospital-approved disinfectants. Let's also dedicate patient care equipment to a single patient. Use hospital detergents followed by disinfection with 1000 ppm available chlorine or the sodium hypochlorite. Clean and disinfect all surfaces that were in contact with the patient, including chairs, exam tables, and washrooms used by the patient, especially frequently touched surfaces such as doorknobs, faucet handles, and wall surfaces that may have been frequently touched by the patient. And also, let's practice airborne prevention control and use appropriate PPE when performing aerosol generating procedures such as when we are conducting suctioning of secretions or sputum induction. Next slide, please. So now let's move on to the detection part. All healthcare providers shall be mandated to observe a high index of suspicion for mpox when evaluating individuals with the characteristic of acute unexplained rash, mucosal lesions, or lymphadenopathy or swelling of lymph nodes, particularly among the following groups. First, people reporting contact with individuals who have a similar rash or have received a diagnosis of mpox at any phase of the disease. Second, people reporting sexual contact with the same sex and or with multiple partners within the last 21 days from symptom onset and are presenting with lesions in the genital or perianal area or any other part of the body. And lastly, people reporting a travel history to countries with reported cases and outbreaks of mpox in the month before illness onset. Next slide, please. To continue with the detection, all healthcare providers shall elicit and check for signs and symptoms of mpox during history taking and physical examination, such as skin lesions like vesicles or pustules that are deep-seated, firm or hard, well circumscribed, and usually located on the head, palms, and soles. Also, let's look for signs and symptoms of fever, chills, myalgia, back pain, malaise, asthenia, or weakness or lack of energy, or lymphadenopathy. Next slide. Also, all healthcare providers shall assess their patients based on both clinical and epidemiological factors. MPAX shall be considered as a different diagnosis to patients with unexplained acute rash, skin lesions such as macule, papule, pustule, or a vesicular rash that could be consistent with MPAX, or lymphadenopathy among the subpopulations identified. A referral to a dermatologist through teleconsultation or face-to-face consultation is ideal as other skin conditions may look like MPAX skin lesions. Also, other potential causes of acute rash shall also be considered by collecting sufficient volume of samples to accommodate differential testing. Example is for the secondary syphilis, herpes, chancroid, and varicella zoster. And also, screening and testing for other underlying conditions or co-infections may also be considered. Next slide. All public and private healthcare providers, public health authorities, points of entry, disease reporting units, and institutions or offices shall of course notify the Department of Health for any suspect, probable, or confirmed case within 24 hours of detection, following the surveillance case definition for MPAX. At all points of entry, the BOQ shall conduct symptom-based screening for MPAX for all incoming international travelers, especially those individuals who came from countries with reported MPAX cases. The BOQ shall immediately report cases to the EB and coordinate with designated referral hospitals for further assessment, testing, and management. Next slide, please. All suspect and probable cases shall be tested for laboratory confirmation of MPAX. Samples shall initially be sent to the RITM. A listing of other capacitated laboratories will be released by the Department of Health in coordination with the RITM once available. Samples of these confirmed cases shall be sequenced by RITM in coordination with the Epidemiology Bureau and our Regional Epidemiology and Surveillance Unit or RESU for further characterization of MPAX virus strain to identify its clade and subclade. Should the volume of samples for sequencing exceed its sequencing capacity, samples shall be referred to the UP Philippine Genome Center in coordination with the EB and RESU. And now, I will now give the floor to Dr. Eva Marie Vittorio, our Infectious Disease Unit Head, to discuss the monitoring, isolation, treatment, and reintegration for MPAX. Over, Doc Eva.
Thank you very much, Ms. Christine. Now, may I proceed with monitoring and isolation. Close contacts shall be monitored or should self-monitor daily for the onset of signs and symptoms for a period of 21 days from the last contact with a suspect, probable or confirmed case, or their contaminated materials. Asymptomatic contacts who adequately and regularly monitor their status can continue routine daily activities such as going to work and attending school. Suspect, probable, or confirmed MPOX cases with mild, uncomplicated disease and not at high risk for complications can be isolated at home for the duration of infectious period or at least 21 days from the onset of symptoms until lesions have healed and scabs fall off, whichever is longer. If home assessment confirms that infection prevention and control measures are in place. Decision to isolate and monitor a patient at home should be made on a case-to-case basis and be based on their clinical severity, presence of complications, care needs, risk factor for severe diseases, and access to referral for hospitalization if condition deteriorates. Patients isolating at home should be ambulatory, have access to food and water, and be able to feed, bathe, and dress themselves and require minimal to no assistance from a caregiver. Patients at high risk for complications, like our young children, pregnant women, and those who are immunocompromised, or those with severe or complicated mpox, should be admitted to the hospital for closer monitoring and clinical care under appropriate isolation precautions to prevent transmission of the mpox virus. Patients with mpox who develop complications or severe disease should be managed with optimized supportive care interventions such as pain management, nutrition support, palliative care based on the latest appropriate standards of care. Next slide, please. All those who are isolated at home shall be observed with the following precautions. Patients shall be isolated in a dedicated, well-ventilated room with windows that cannot be opened. These areas should be separate from our other household members and away from shared areas of the home. Patients shall remain in isolation and refrain from close contact until resolution of all symptoms. Avoid contact with others, including animals and pets, where feasible. Limit the use of spaces, items, and food with other household members. And use separate bathroom if possible. And if no separate bathroom, the patient should clean and disinfect surfaces right after use. Next slide, please. The following infection control measures shall be observed while in isolation, such as, but not limited to, avoidance of skin manipulation, example, peeling off the scabs, scratching, and keeping the lesions dry and clean to avoid further transmission and superinfection. In case of presence of weeping wounds, the wounds with pus-like or clear fluid, we should cover it with a sterile gauze or bandage. Wear a surgical mask, especially those who have respiratory symptoms. Next slide, please. For the treatment, it is mainly supportive and is directed at relieving symptoms such as fever, pain, and pruritus. Patients may be provided with the following for symptomatic relief, such as antipyretics, analgesics, stool softeners, oral antiseptics, and oral antihistamines. Supportive treatment of skin lesions shall be provided to patients to relieve discomfort, hasten the healing, and prevent complications. Patients should be instructed to keep skin lesions clean and dry to prevent bacterial infection. They should also be instructed to wash hands with soap and water or use alcohol-based hand sanitizer before and after touching the rash to prevent infection. The lesions may then be cleaned gently with sterile water or antiseptic solution. It is important to note that the rash should not be covered but rather left to open air to dry. For complications of skin lesions such as exfoliation or suspicion of deeper soft tissue infection, consider consultation with the appropriate specialist. Next slide, please. Adequate nutrition and appropriate rehydration should be provided based on a thorough assessment of the individual's nutritional and fluid status. Oral nutrition should be encouraged daily, and they should provide relief to oropharyngeal lesions and lymphadenopathy hindering the food intake. We should counsel patients with mild mpox about signs and symptoms of complication that should prompt urgent care. All suspect, probable, and confirmed mpox cases should have access to follow-up care, and all patients with mpox, including their caregivers, should be counseled to monitor for any persistent, new, or changing symptoms. If this occurs, they should seek medical care according to the national or the local healthcare pathway. Next slide, please. Under the reintegration, individuals within the households, communities, schools, and workplaces, including key populations, shall continuously observe infection control measures. Clearance to return to work shall be provided by the attending physician. provide mental health and psychosocial support strategies to affected individuals to ensure their overall well-being during and after recovery. Further, through the Department Circular 2024-0333 or the updated list of dangerous communicable disease pursuant to the requirements of Administrative Order AO number 2021-0056A entitled Amendment to the Revised Implementing Rules and Regulations of the Code on Sanitation of the Philippines, Chapter 21, Disposal of Dead Persons, Mpox is now included in the list of Category 1 dangerous communicable diseases. Supplemental guidelines will be issued to provide further guidelines on the guidance on the handling and disposal of human remains of suspect, probable, and confirmed Mpox cases. Next slide, please. So for the risk communication and community engagement strategies, may I now ask Ms. Jeanette Primicias to continue.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Okay. So I'm here to present the risk communication and community engagement plan for Mpox. I'd like to stress three important principles of risk communication response for our Mpox RCCE. So our strategies will focus on three principles, which is for the first one would be actionable communication. With this, we shall emphasize prevention strategies and symptom recognition. And then the second would be respect for human dignity, which is really very important. The use of inclusive language, the use of non-sensationalized images, and avoidance of attribution to specific communities so as to avoid stigmatization of certain populations should be taken into account. The third one would be timely and responsive communication, or the implementation of strategies and languages that will resonate with the audience. Our desired outcomes for our audiences is to know the signs and symptoms of Mpox. So what are the signs and symptoms of Mpox? These were all presented to us by our speakers. And just to reiterate, the signs and symptoms of Mpox, nandyan po yung fever, nandyan yung lesions, nandyan yung rashes, and also yung body malaise or aches and pain. And risk factors and preventive behaviors also should also be reiterated to the audience in order for them to actually do something to protect themselves and the community. And the third one would be for our audience to know specifically what are the patient pathways, the hotlines they can connect to the primary care services, kung saan po sila pwedeng pumunta, and also the testing sites, kung saan sila pwedeng magpa-test. And also to believe that Mpox is real and anyone is susceptible to contract Mpox. Maari po that we have some highly populations at risk of acquiring or getting infected by Mpox. But of course, I'd like to reiterate that anyone can be affected by Mpox. So yun po, kailangan alala natin sa kanila, believe that it is real. Mpox is real and it's happening. And we have to make them feel that they are safe and they are supported when when consulting symptoms actually occur, and they are protected in establishments. So this is dito po very important that they feel that they have a pathway na very well defined for them to access, and then do practice good hand hygiene. Ito po ugaliin natin that everyone practice good hand hygiene and sanitize yung mga high-touch surfaces and avoid anonymous sexual activities, monitor symptoms, and then seek immediate consultation. So to continue, I'd like to share with you yung tatlo po na stages for our RCCE strategies. So the RCCE strategy follows an escalation plan. This outlines the procedures for communication and engagement activities based on the severity of the MPAX outbreak. So during the pre-MPAC, ang ating trigger po would be the cases in the Philippines, okay? But at this stage, wala pa siyang local cases. So our key outcomes, ano yung gusto nating mangyari, we would like for the public to be aware of what MPOX is and prepare the community, engage them in activities that will raise awareness and prepare them para po dito sa possible na MPOX case na of course, ayaw natin naman na kumalat. But mas maganda pa rin po that everyone is prepared, the community is prepared, lahat po alam ang gagawin. And so from the pre-impact stage, we move on to the early impact stage. Ang trigger natin dito would be the index case or cluster that detected in the region. So ayan, sa Calabarzon, ito na po tayo, no? So what we would like to our key outcomes, no, is yung preventive behaviors. We would like to stress what the preventive behaviors are, and that yung ating community-centered response is activated. Our community-centered response should focus on empowering yung mga local populations natin. It is very important that we build trust dito sa mga ating mga komunidad. And also, yung mga interventions natin should be tailored on what their needs are and ano yung mga cultural practices nila na dapat maging sensitive tayo. So that's for early impact. And then we move on to sustained impact. Our trigger would be the widespread cases which led to the community transmission. So dito naman po, our key outcomes, yun pong mga preventive behaviors pa rin, of course. And then the widely accepted, okay, patient pathways are understood by the public, okay? Dito po, we can make use of all the available information dissemination platforms that we have. We can make use of yung atin pong mga social media platforms and the communities. Pwede po na yung mga community engagements or dialogues, fora na pwede natin gawin. And we can also, yun nga po, utilize the social media para sa ating information dissemination and engagement with our media partners. So we move on to the pre-impact messaging. So dito po, ang ating key behaviors na gusto natin. Alam nila again yung symptoms. Ito po paulit-ulit to that the people, the public should know ano ba yung simptomas ng MPOX, ano ang mga risk factors ng MPOX, and then kasi po stay informed about the situation ay ma-empower po ang lahat to protect their own health and syempre yung mga mahal din po nila sa buhay. And then reducing close contact, kasi nga nabanggit po natin skin to skin contact ang primary source po ng transmission nito. So yung pag-iwas po natin, especially to dun po sa mga suspect, probable, and especially confirmed cases. Practicing hand hygiene and sanitation of high-touch surfaces. Kaya po we sa information dissemination, nire-reiterate din po namin that yung mga linens, yung mga surfaces, kailangan thoroughly nalilinis siya. Okay? And the public communication from key influencers, of course, and spokespeople, the people that the community trusts, the people that the public actually trusts. Andyan po yung mga experts. Andyan din yung mga local chief executives natin. And lahat po na mga pinaniniwalaan na siyang pwede po nating maging medium din, no, to transmit important messages, updates, and information about MPOX. And the release, of course, of education materials in print and digital platforms to aid yung pong ating pag-disseminate ng information. So that's for public communication. Hindi naman po to carve sa stone. You can do whatever is actually, kumbaga naka-tailor fit sa inyo, sa komunidad ninyo, kung ano po yung pwede nyong gawin. And then for primary audience, these would be, yung key populations natin would be the LGBT community because yung mga recent po na mga reports dyan po sa ating mga LGBT community po mataas, yung sila po ay at risk. But again, I'd like to reiterate, hindi lang po sa LGBT community, kahit sino po ay pwedeng maapektuhan. So ang key behaviors po na gusto natin is knowing the symptoms of MPOX again, practicing hand hygiene, sanitation ng high-touch or high-touch surfaces, in community spaces, and then avoiding anonymous sexual contact, and then actively encouraging members of the community to protect each other. Okay? So discreet communication po, gusto ko rin po to stress, this is highly recommended. Ay isa po to sa prinsipyo na gusto po nating paalala sa lahat, okay? Kasi po, so as not to stigmatize yung mga community in public, okay? So, community dialogues, nabanggit ko na rin po to, enabling community spokespeople, and then release of educational materials in print and digital forms through community influencers, okay? Yan po yung pwede natin gawin for pre-impact messaging for our primary audience or yung mga key populations in the LGBT community. And then we move on to our secondary audiences. That would be ngayon po, kasama natin madaming mga DOH staff, and then from the local governments, and then siguro po mga ibang partners natin, and the public. Marami po tayong mga audience today. So ito po, our key behaviors, okay? So review case definition guidelines and reporting mechanisms kasi this will guide us po, no? Pag alam natin itong mga ito. And then follow proper infection prevention practices when doing checkups on suspect cases. And then prompt reporting of detected cases, being mindful when discussing MPOX in official and unofficial platforms to avoid promoting stigma. Okay? Napaka-importante po nito because ito po, pag ganito kasi, if we are mindful of yung mga yung trust kasi magigain natin, if we are very careful and if we are kumbaga protecting yung human dignity, okay? So dito po, the people will actually listen to us, believe us, support us, and probably follow all of our preventive measures and lahat po na ating gustong ipatupad. And then to move on, yung cascade po of guidelines from the DOH, Central Office, and the cascade of key messages, conduct of town hall, and medical societies, dun po sa case definitions, key messages, and patient pathways. Okay, so ito naman po for the early impact messaging, ganyan din. So napaka-importante po, know the symptoms, the risk factors of MPOX, staying informed about the situation, reducing close contact, and then yung practice po ng hand hygiene and sanitation of mga high-touch surfaces. This is actually applicable din po for both the primary and the secondary audiences. But for the community, around the index case, maganda po yung active system monitoring ay nandyan, and then immediate consultation pagka po symptomatic. Okay? And then, of course, contact tracing. Ayan. And then for the secondary audience po, para po sa ating key population in LGBT community, ang ating key behaviors, syempre gusto natin natin alam ang simptomas ng Mpox, nagpa-practice ng hand hygiene at sanitation, paglilinis thoroughly ng mga high-touch surfaces in the community, and avoid anonymous sexual contact, and actively encouraging members of the community to protect each other. Okay? So ang discreet communication natin po dyan is highly recommended, again, dito po sa mga population nito at lahat po ng mga maapektuhan ng Mpox, so as not to stigmatize the community and public. Okay? So yun po yung gusto kong stress. The rest is the same din naman po with the other audiences. Okay. So for sustained impact actions po, provide enabling environment. The nudges should be present. Ano po ba yung mga gusto nating ipaalala sa kanila? Yun pong pag-prevent nila, para pag-prevent ng spread ng Mpox. And then proper sanitation is practiced and sanitizers should be available po kung sinasabi natin sa isang, kunwari, sa isang community or sa workplace, okay, na especially dun sa mga hospitals natin, yung mga ating mga healthcare workers who are directly providing care to these patients, no? Dapat po available, syempre, yung mga natin, sanitizers, okay, malinis ang kapaligiran nila, pati yung mga linens na ayos. So yan po, we should provide an enabling environment to support all of our interventions and also improve personal skills. Ito po ay we are orienting everyone po through our ituro session dito po sa DOH Calabarzon. So yung preventive behaviors po should be widely accepted and disseminated. Information about symptoms are widely available, okay, in all platforms na maaari po nating gamitin. Also information about patient pathways. Ito, napaka-importante rin po nito. It should be clear and it should be well-defined. Okay, early consultation and testing, primary care is easily accessible. Services are available and access to service is not stigmatized. Ayan. So these are, gusto ko lang po i-share, these are the resources available and some are in production. Meron po tayong Mpox fact sheet, self-risk assessment, and the unbranded art cards of the Secretary of Health radio and the Secretary of Health radio ads. So lahat po ito, if you click the link po na naka-flash sa screen ngayon, ma-access nyo po ito and the other available and the other materials in production. Okay? Ayan. So these are additional resources available and in production. Ayan po, isanitize ang mga gamit na madalas na hinahawakan, regular na paghugas ng kamay at mag-physical distancing. Okay? So I think that's my last slide. So gusto ko lang po stress sa lahat that together we can actually prevent the spread of Mpox and protect our community. Let us stay safe, let us stay informed, and take action to protect yourself and others. Thank you so much po.
Okay, thank you so much, Ma'am Jay, Miss Jeanette Atienza Primicias. So we hope po na it was all clear to us now that it was already shared with us from the situationer and updated case po ng Mpox. We also have an idea regarding about the prevention, detection, and management of Mpox. And just like what Miss Jeanette said, that we should stay informed. Okay, so now for the last presentation, we have here, it will be presented to us by Ms. Dayang S. Husaina K. Idjirani, the ICS Briefer and Regional Mpox Hotline. Ma'am Dayang.
Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Am I coming loud and clear? Hello? Am I coming in loud and clear, ma'am?
Ma'am Dayang, we cannot hear you po.
All right, wait lang. Hello? Coming
Wala
loud
pa
and
rin
clear
po. Okay, we cannot hear
Wala
pa rin po.
Wait.
Pa-refresh.
Wait lang.
Ma'am Dayang, pa-refresh na lang daw po yung page po. Okay. Okay, while waiting for Miss Dayang, again, it was already shared with us the situationer and the updated case of the MPOX. We have also an idea how to prevent also the detection, monitoring, and isolation, and also the treatment. And again, we would like to stress out with you to stay informed, okay, and also practice hand hygiene because that is very important. So again, for Ms. Dayang, she will be discuss the ICS briefer and regional MPOX hotline. Okay. Wala pa rin po siya. Hello po, Ma'am Dayang.
Hi, I'm back again. I'm sorry for the delay. Am I coming loud and clear? So let's start, ma'am.
Yes po,
Okay.
ma'am.
Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that some of the content in the presentation has been adapted from the Health Emergency Response Operation PowerPoint, and we have tailored the information to fit our context and objective for today. So I'll be discussing the Incident Command System briefer and the update on the regional MPOX hotline. Next slide, please. So, talking about this slide, so kung makikita nyo po, it was called out under the Health Emergency and Disaster Response Management Framework from our Manual of Procedures under the Department of Health Emergency Management Bureau, because this slide talks about on the response. So we have been preventing and mitigating the impacts, and also we are preparing everything na kailangan po natin under the sun when it comes to the impacts. So ngayon, we are preparing for a response. So when we say response, it must be a well-organized and effective response. So hindi na po natin ito tackle all about all the management under the response cluster, no? But we have to focus on the management of the event and incident, that we will be focusing on the incident command system. So next slide, please. Okay, so our objective here is we have to know, at the end of this session, we have to know the roles and responsibilities ng ating pong incident command system. Kung sino po ba yung member nung nasa loob ng ating incident command system. And also, we have to describe the importance of an effective coordination between the Emergency Operations Center and the incident command system in managing the incident. And also, a brief discussion on the organizational structure of the incident command system and its adaptability to the incidents of varying complexity. Next slide, please. So for a short discussion with regard to the 4 C's in emergency response, in the emergency management and response, the 4 C's plays a pivotal role, and these are the command, the control, the coordination, and communication. So when we say command, it is underlined by the establishment of a clear leadership and made to convey from the central authority. In time of crisis, we have to ensure direction and response. And also, when we talk about a control, it refers to the regulation of the resources and actions, and also ensures that all efforts are streamlined and aligned with the overall strategy defined by the command. On the coordination aspect, we have to bring various entities here and resources together. It enables a seamless interaction and collaboration among different teams, agencies, and department that involved in the response effort. And on the communication, na-discuss na rin naman po part ni Ma'am Jeanette kanina, this is the backbone of an effective emergency management. It encompasses the exchange of information, instructions, and updates among all stakeholders. This ensures that everyone is well informed and can act accordingly. So these 4 elements, actually collectively known as the 4 C's, can form a foundation of a well-organized and efficient emergency response. So next slide, please. So here we have what we call the Emergency Operations Center. So lagi po natin naririnig ano po ba yung pinagkaiba? Ano po ba yung operation center? Ano po ba yung emergency operation? Bakit kailangan may pagkakaiba po pa ba ito, yung dalawang ito? Kasi kadalasan lagi lang natin naririnig OPSEN while the EOC, maririnig mo lang siya once activated the ICS. So the difference between an emergency operation center and an operation center lies mainly in their scope and function. So when we say operation center, ito po can be done or can be used for day-to-day operation or for emergency management, but often it is a broader in scope, not limited to disaster situation. While the Emergency Operations Center primarily activated during an emergencies, disasters, or crisis to manage the overall response. Emergency Operations Center serve as a very crucial hub for coordinating and emergency responses. So kanina po natackle na yung ating communication, yung coordination, but I would like to emphasize here that the centerpiece of the ICS lies in its function of command and control. This facet ensures that the response operations are efficiently directed and managed by establishing an actions taken by the emergency response. So the EOC is a very critical component of the ICS because it focuses on the communication and coordination during an emergency situation. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here, again, EOC, these EOCs are tailored to their respective areas of expertise. So kung ano po yung applicable within the local government unit or minsan po sa ating pong municipal or city health offices, pwede nyo po siyang i-tweak. Basta po, nandoon pa rin yung standard form of an EOC. So this center works in collaboration with the ICS to ensure efficient incident management. Kadalasan din, the liaison plays a crucial role in maintaining communication between the on-site command posts and the respective EOC. Integrating EOC into the ICS framework enhances the overall response and the collaboration between these centers for effective incident management. Next slide, please. So before we start on the ICS, we have to define first what is incident. So the best example here is what we are now focusing on the impacts. So incident is an occurrence of an event, natural or man-made, that requires response to protect life and property. Next slide, please. So when we say incident command system, ICS is a standardized all hazard incident management concept implemented on the scene of emergency. The primary purpose of the ICS is to achieve three crucial objectives. First is we have to prioritize the safety of the responders and everyone involved in the incident. Second, we have to aim to accomplish tactical objectives efficiently, directing response actions towards specific goals. And lastly, ICS focuses on the optimal use of available resources, ensuring that they are utilized effectively to address the incident. With ICS is in place, it's akin to have a clear, narrow pointing to the exact targets that needs attention. It also streamlines decision-making and task assignments, making it easier to accomplish response objective. Next slide, please. Also, ICS can be used for any type and complexity of the incident. And this structure is very adaptable and matches the complexities and demands of a single or multiple incident. So here in the slide, the ICS is organized into the two kinds of staff. We have a command and the general staff. So when we say command staff, these are command staff is in charge of the command and control, as well as the general staff who is in charge for the tactical operation. The ICS is defined by the function and associated responsibilities. Next slide, please. Okay, so here we will be talking about the primary management function. So it is designed with a structure centered on a 5 primary management function known as the general staff. So these functions that you are seeing now in the presentation are very crucial pillars of the system's effectiveness in managing incident comprehensively. So when we say command, the command function is responsible for overall incident management and decision making. So the incident commander heads this function and holds the ultimate responsibility for coordinating the response effort. On the side of operation, the operation functions deals with direct tactical operations and carries out the response action based on our incident action plan developed during the planning phase. So technically, no, ang ating operation team is often referred to as the doer, as they are effectively engaged in executing response action. While on the planning function gathers and analyzes information, and it also develops strategies and formulates the IAP, or what we call incident action plan. It also ensures that response actions align with the incident's evolving condition, serve as what we call them as a thinkers. So, sa logistics naman po, it handles resource support and the procurement and distribution. It ensures that all necessary resources like human and non-human resources, such as the personnel, the equipment, are properly utilized during their spans. Last but not the least, the finance and admin. So it manages the financial matters, track costs, and handle administrative tasks related to the incident. While it may not be present during the drills, it plays a very critical role during an actual incident, making it indispensable component of the response effort. Next slide, please. Okay. ICS also operates on a management by objective approach, meaning it is driven and managed with clear objectives in mind. We have a 4 key steps involved here: the understanding, the policy, the objective, the strategy, and the tactical directions. So when we say understand policy and direction, before setting objective, it is crucial to understand the overarching policies and direction guiding the response effort. So kaya po kung makikita nyo po on our program of activities, before we start all of the discussion, we have presented first yung discussion ni Ma'am Moana and then the department memorandum, so that we have a policy and direction kung ano po ba yung gagawin nating response effort in related to the impacts. Next is established objective. Once the policies are clear, specific objectives are established, the objectives typically revolve around 3 main priorities. So our objective here are, number 1 is we have to preserve life, 2, stabilize the incident, and last is to protect the property. And third, select appropriate strategy. Objectives in place, responder can now identify and select the most suitable strategies to achieve those objectives effectively. And last but not the least is we have to perform tactical direction. It involves making decisions and allocating resources wisely to carry out the selected strategies and accomplish the established objective. Next slide, please. Okay, so now the incident command system follows the unity of command and the chain of command. In the world of the incident management, the ICS plays a pivotal role grounded in our 2 vital principles, which is the unity of command and the chain of command. These principles serve as the cornerstone for orchestrating a coherent and efficient response, especially in scenarios involving multiple agencies and complex challenges. So when we say unity of command, it shines a spotlight on the importance of a unified leadership structure, particularly in instances where the scale of the incident necessitates collaborations among various agencies. While the chain of command, it is a clear hierarchy for effective leadership. So stands as an equally essential principle, creating a structured hierarchy and leadership framework within the tumultuous landscape of the incident. So this prevents conflicting agendas, minimizes inefficiencies arising from disjointed actions, and preemptively addresses potential conflict. So next slide, please. Okay, what we have here is the unity of command structure in the ICS. So in incident management, especially when dealing with mass casualty incidents or a bigger disaster, having a well-structured command system is vital for an effective response. So the incident commander, which is on the top, who calls the shot. And then we are also calling the incident commander as the captain of the ship because he makes the critical decisions and steering the response in the right direction. And underneath the commander, there are different functions or roles that needs to work together seamlessly. Number one is the triage, rescue, extrication, transport, and treatment, each playing a specific part in the managing the incident. Next slide, please. So yes, actually this is ito na yung pinaka-highlight ng ating presentation with the chain of command structure in the ICS. Incident command system is a very powerful tool for managing incidents of all sizes and complexities. At the center of the ICS is the incident commander. The incident commander, the person in charge making critical decisions and steering the ship, they provide the overall direction and coordination for the entire operation. ICS is likely carefully designed framework with different parts, each serving specific purpose. These parts include the operations section, the planning section, the finance administration section, and the logistics section. So, kung makikita nyo po dito, no, under the operations, may mga branches pa na pwede po kayong gawin. And then for the planning and the logistics and the finance, also, you can include the unit here. Dito po sa ating PowerPoint presentation, if we can still remember, there are two types of staff, the command and the general staff. So dito, let's focus on the general staff. So pag sinabi po nating operation section, is like the frontline workers handling the actual task on the ground. Okay, so sila po yung doers. While on the planning section, the strategic thinkers creating the game plan. Yun lang po siya, the planning section chief. While on the finance and administrative section, it deals with the resources and costs. While the logistics section, it also ensures everything is in place, like a well-organized supply chain. Within this structure, there are also specialized team known as the branches. So, hindi na po natin siya masyadong gagalawin because mas makikita nyo po siya mamaya when we presented the actual ICS of the regional office. Next slide, please. Okay. Ito pong slide, typically, no, ang gusto lang po niyang sabihin, ICS is an organizational that is very flexible on a principle. So, the system is designed to be adaptable and modular, ensuring that the resources are allocated based on the specific needs of the incident. Next slide, please. So let's go on the roles and responsibility of the members of the incident command system. Next slide, please. So yan. If familiar po kayo, this is Secretary Gilberto Teodoro, which is the Secretary to the Department of the National Defense, chairperson of the NDRRMC. So technically, if we have declared disasters, siya po yung laging nakatayo as the responsible official. So when we say responsible official, it holds a significant position with important responsibility. This individual is typically the chairperson of the NDRRMC. But if we're going to put it on the regional level, for example, on the Department of Health, CHD Calabarzon, the responsible official will be the Assistant Secretary of Health, Dr. Ariel Valencia, or our Assistant Regional Director, Dr. Leda Hernandez. Also, the responsible official includes the head of the agency, organization, or offices. So kung kayo man po is under the city health offices, it will be your city health officer. And ganun din po on the MHO. But on the perspective of the local government unit, if we are talking about the municipality per se, the responsible official can be the mayor or the vice mayor. Next slide, please. Okay. So here we are talking about the incident commander. The incident commander plays a crucial role in the incident management and response. They receive their authority from the responsible official, who is often the chairperson of the Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. But on our perspective, kung sa atin man yon, dito sa inyo, for example, for the local government unit, so our responsible official will be the mayor, ang pwede po niyang itas-assign, kung ito man ay may kinalaman sa health, it can be the city or the municipal health officer nung mismo pong municipality na city involved for a disasters or an emergencies. And also, the incident commander establishes a specific objective for the incident response. This objective serve as the foundation for coordinating the efforts of the response team. And also, the IC takes charge of forming the incident management team and assume the leadership role in overseeing the tactical and on-scene response operation to determine the appropriate individual to serve as IC. And also, if you're going to ask, sino po ba yung pwedeng maging incident commander? So, ang laging sinasabi, on the perspective of an incident commander, it is not about merely point finger or having a relationship with the power. Okay? Rather, mas magandang may talaga as an incident commander, yung may experience and practical knowledge dun sa ating response operation. Experience in handling real-life incidents and emergencies is very vital para ikaw po ay maging incident commander. Next slide, please. Okay. And also, the incident commander holds a pivotal role as the first responder or as someone who is delegated by the responsible official. And the IC leads the tactical incident response, making the decisions and coordinating efforts on the command staff and the general staff. Next slide, please. Okay. So, the incident commander defines the mission and ensure its completion. So kung makikita nyo po minsan, we have an incident commander, but sometimes we are also delegating a deputy incident commander. So hindi naman po lagi minsan iisa lang ang IC. Minsan based on the situation, kung kakayanin ba or kailangan bang talagang maglagay ng assistant or what we call the deputy incident commander. The deputy incident commander is created upon the need of the IC, specifically in the management of a large-scale public health emergency. Next slide, please. Okay. Skip ko na rin po ito. Next slide, please. Okay. Here we go. In the incident management process, there are two key roles involved: the responsible official and the incident commander. The responsible official holds the ultimate responsibility for managing the incident. They select and delegate authority to the incident commander and oversee the incident on behalf of the responsible official, while the incident commander is the individual chosen and authorized by the responsible official to manage the actions. In summary, the system ensures clear accountability between the responsible official and the incident commander. The responsible official entrust the IC or the incident commander with the authority to manage the incident, while the incident commander remains responsible for executing responses actions and achieving the objectives set by the responsible official. So these clear delegations of authority allows for a coordinated and effective response effort. Next slide, please. So now, let's go with the command staff. So under the incident commander, we have the command staff. Mainly, these are the safety officers, the public information officer or the PIO, and the liaison officer. So when we say safety officer, it monitors the facility and detects and correct unsafe situations, while the public information officers provide information to the news media and serve as the central point for information and dissemination. The liaison officer functions as incident contact person for representative from other assisting and cooperating agencies. Kadalasan makikita nyo po on the liaison part, we have the internal and external to utilize properly the communication on the interagency approach. Next slide, please. Okay, no? In the Incident Command System organization, the incident commander has the option to designate the command staff. So dito po, mamaya makikita nyo po kung sino yung example po namin on the structure of the ICS. So next slide, please. Okay, let's go with the general staff. The general staff consists of the operations, the planning, the logistics, and administrative or finance. So the operations section carries out the objective to the best of their ability, and the planning section collects and analyzes information, while the logistics section is responsible for the acquisition and maintenance of the facility. And last but not the least is the admin or the finance, which monitors the incident costs and maintains financial record, and administer procurement contracts and perform all the time recording during the incident. So next slide, please. Okay, next slide. Okay, let's now talk about the incident management team. Once makapag-establish na po tayo who is the responsible official, who is the incident commander, and kung sino yung member on the command staff and the general staff, dito na po mafo-formulate what we call the incident management team. It is a rostered group of the ICS qualified personnel consisting of an incident commander, the general staff, and the command staff. So the IMT is dispatched or mobilized during a complex emergency incident to provide a command and control infrastructure in order to manage the operational, logistical, informational, planning, fiscal, community, political, and safety issues associated with the complex incident. So ano po ba ang benepisyo ng ating ICS? Siyempre, ICS is very beneficial because it meets the demands of any incident in an organized, effective, and efficient manner. It promotes rapid melding among various agencies' personnel and also includes logistical and administrative support and very cost-effective. The result also in prompt resumption of normal operation. Next slide, please. So sa lahat po kanina ng mga dinidiscuss natin with regard to the information of the ICS briefer, ito po yung example of a signed ICS structure. So kung makikita nyo po, on the left upper part, we have the responsible official, and on the middle is the incident commander, and on the right part of the screen would be the Emergency Operations Center. Kung makikita nyo po, dalawa po yung ating EOC because it handles mainly on the perspective of MPAC's response. And under the incident commander, we have the command staff. So kung makikita, you have liaison, safety officer, public information officer, and and here makikita nyo po, may nadagdag pang dalawang function, which is the hospital operation and the hospital regulation. So kaya nga po lagi natin sinasabi on the ICS, it's very flexible, based on the needs ng inyo pong institution, based on the needs ng response din ng inyong institution. So after that, underneath, we have the planning, we have the operations, the planning, the logistics, and administrative. So dito na po lalabas, under the operations, planning, logistics, and administrative are the branches of our IMT. So ito lang po, to give you a, na mas mai-imagine nyo, ano ba ang itsura ng isang incident command. So bakit ba siya kailangan gawin? Because of a proper coordination and communication para mas maging maganda and effective ang magiging response natin for a specific disasters and emergencies. Next slide, please. Okay. So this presentation, nagpalabas po ng Department Memorandum ang Health Emergency Management Bureau in relation to the submission of the MPAC's hotline. Etong memorandum na to is talks about the dissemination to the public sana nung ating mga what we called hotlines. Hindi lang pala actually hotlines, the functional hotlines na matatawagan po ng ating community. In this memo, the Department of Health recognizes the benefits of our telemedicine. As part of the response in increasing the number of MPOX cases, the telemedicine plays a very crucial role in efficient patient navigation and referral. During the teleconsultation, we can have here the triage assessment. It can be conducted to determine the most suitable healthcare facility for each specific patient's needs. And also, including here is the testing, the treatment, and management for referral. And we would like to, we highly encourage all hospitals, city, municipality, and local government units that you have to submit your functional hotlines na kailangan po natin maibigay sa ating DOH Central Office on or before September 9. We will be giving you the link of the memorandum, and also we are just waiting for the signed advisory coming from our Assistant Secretary of Health para po dito sa submission of our functional hotlines. So I think that would be my last slide, ma'am. Maraming salamat at gusto ko po sanang tapusin itong presentation ko on what we are advocating, the 5K, nakaligtasang pangkalusugan sa kalamidad sa kamay ng komunidad. Sana po mas paigtingin pa po natin ang response plan for MPOX at tayo po ay mag-establish ng hotline para po mas maging effective ang response. Maraming salamat at magandang hapon po.